I am your host today for Stitch Stories, the podcast where we go through the threads of patch collections and the stories behind them. Today I have my dad here with me, Scott. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. So before we get started, Dad, can you give the audience a little bit about yourself? Can you give your little brief overview? What makes you you? What makes your world go round?
Geez, that's actually harder than it should be. I am, first of all, a dad to two amazing kids, both of which I think I have inspired to be patch collectors. And also, I'm a realtor. I'm heavily involved in my community here in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and happy to be talking to you guys today.
Love it. Well, glad to hear it. Yes, thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to dive into the stories and the threads and the stitches that make up the stories that we have, especially through our patches. So, to kind of get started, the very first question I want to ask you is what got you into collecting patches?
I started collecting patches. I used to travel a lot, not real widespread, but I'd go on a lot of vacations and things. And we were always trying to find souvenirs to bring back to other people and for ourselves. And the big thing became shot glasses that we would collect everywhere we'd go. And they were always a pain in the butt to haul around while you're traveling and get them home without getting broken, and then get them to people and store them at home, and they would only come out at parties and stuff, and you'd never really use them, and eventually you'd move and they'd all end up getting broke. And at a certain point I became much more interested in the outdoors than I ever had been. And I think I already had a few patches, but I wasn't a collector at that point. But once I really started going to national parks with the idea in mind that I wanted something to remember that trip for, um, patches just became kind of the obvious choice and have stuck with me. So,
I love it. I love to hear that. It's a cool idea to see how the journey goes from collecting something else to now, of course, collecting patches, and kind of the journey that you take to get there. My next question for you is with that first time when you decided to start collecting patches, do you remember the very first patch you ever got?
well, I think I know what the first patch I ever got was, and it was one of those that I didn't intend to be a collector, but it's kind of special to me in a way now. I think I got a patch from Great River Brewery in uh, Idaho or Iowa, the local hometown bar that we'd always go and meet friends at, and that was kind of our hangout. And they gave me a patch one day, and I kind of stuck it in a drawer and had it for a while. And then once I became a collector, that's still one of my favorite patches and gives me lots of fun memories. The first real place I ever went and intended to collect a patch was the first time I visited Mount Rainier, was actually on a work trip, and some of the work we needed to do got held up. And that evening, actually about 10 in the evening, I ended up with not really knowing what I was going to do the next day. I was living in Iowa, traveled out to Seattle, and was there with a free day. And I thought, man, I am going to go to Mount Rainier. And so I drove there way before sunrise, and was the first one in the park. I think they didn't even charge me that day because I got there before they'd opened up their registers, and spent the whole day hiking and wandering around and taking pictures. And that kind of got me started on a journey of taking photographs and traveling to national parks and other places, and spurred on my love of the outdoors.
I love it. I love to hear that. And that's cool to hear as your daughter. Like, I've heard that story a little bit before, but I never quite realized, those were kind of where it all started. And now it's, gone down between into families and into myself and then east in my brother. And that's really cool to hear. So as you started that journey, you got your first patch, albeit whether it was gifted to you or the first one you bought. How do you think that has changed from the very first patch that you got? What would you say is your favorite patch now?
My favorite patch now is an easy one. Let's see, I've got it here. And this one is special to me because my kids gave it to me for Father's Day this year. So it kind of represents not only patch collecting, but how it's become part of our family and a part of our lives. Just to have these things around, and that my kids would think to this to remember an important day. And also, I got in a bike accident the day I got, or the actual day of Father's Day during this year. And that was an unfortunate incident that I will always remember. So,
So
yeah,
it has some dual meaning to it, for sure.
yes,
Love it. Maybe it'll become a tradition in the family to make patches for specific events
I
and
hope
things
so.
of the sort. Yeah, yeah, it's very fun. Okay, I love to hear it, and that makes me feel good because I made the patch. It's awesome to hear. Anyway, so that kind of leads me into my next question because I saw you kind of fishing for that patch. How do you typically store or display your patches?
Well, this all started with I had a real, call it a midlife crisis. I was living in California at the time and working a 4-day week. And then I had a long commute to pick up my son and bring him back home. And then a long commute at the end of the weekend to take him to his mom and then travel back home again. And I kind of got sick of that whole lifestyle. And so I ended my lease on my apartment and I bought a Ram ProMaster and built it out in about 3 months and moved into the van. And that van, the headliner, became my storage location for all the patches. And at the time, I think I had enough maybe to fill up the driver's side of that. And by the time a year later, I only lived in the band for about a year, but by a year later, I had traveled enough that I had completely overfilled that headliner and couldn't really do anything. So I still store not really my favorite patches, but some of the most visual ones in my car. At least I had them in my car until just before this interview. I took them down because I need to just hang them there better. And the rest of them I keep in the treat jar at home. So anytime someone comes into my home, they see this right as they walk in the door, and if it ever comes up, we can just go through all my memories right then.
I love it. It's one of my favorite things in the house, getting to see the treat jar, and I think it's a fun play on words and just like fun joke to be like, oh yeah, they're my treats.
Well, and the age old question is, if the house was on fire and you could get everyone out safe and go back in for just one more item, what would it be? And for me, it's an easy answer. I'd go grab the treat jar.
The treat jar with the patches in it. Yep.
Yep.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And I think it's such a unique way to store the patches. It's a very, very cool and fun memento to hold and place to showcase the stories and the experiences you've had throughout life. It's cool.
Yep. I'd really rather have something like you've got on the wall behind you, but eventually I'll figure that out.
Yeah, maybe that's a Father's Day gift down the line. We'll see.
Maybe so.
Love it. Well, that kind of transitioned us perfectly into my next question. Do you have or any thoughts on where you see your patch collection going in the future as it grows, as you shift parts of life? How do you feel? How do you see your patch collection shifting with you?
I don't have any big plans for it. Someday I'd like to have a home with like a gear closet or room where I keep all of my adventure items and have it decorated with my patches, but I don't really have a hard and fast plan for what I want to do with those. I'd like to be able to display them somehow. And eventually, I the way things have worked out now is you've kind of got your patches. I've got my patches here, and also I've got duplicates of all of Easton's patches. And someday, eventually I'll give those to him, and you guys will have to fight over who gets all of the rest of my patches.
Where they go, what the patches happen with it. Yeah.
I'm not gonna bequeath them individually to you guys, I don't think.
We just have to decide.
Well, a fun part of it is we've taken so many trips together and separately, and I never buy patches for one kid who wasn't with me on the trip I went on. But we've both traveled to Oregon, different places, and he's got his whole set of patches. But then the next summer, I got to do a road trip with you, and so you've all got yours, and some of them are duplicates, and yeah.
Yeah, it's a fun way to commemorate all the memories, whether or not who was there or what the experience was. It's a great way to have a little memento from the experience.
Well, and I like that there are a few that I have to really think about, okay, when and where did I get this?
Yep.
Even if they're a unique patch, like I have a dozen Yosemite patches. Just every time I went, I always grabbed one. But they all spark a memory.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it.
And
I love
I won't claim that each individual memory is from the trip that patch is from,
it.
but they all spark a memory.
They all spark something, and that's what matters. Well, love it. Well, kind of as an overview, those were some great like topic or overview core questions that really pinpoint your patch collection as a whole. I'd love to dive a little bit deeper into that kind of community and that showcasing that aspect that you have of collecting those patches. I know, of course, with Easton and I, you know some people who collect patches. Do you know anybody else who collects patches? Have you ever connected with anybody else who does?
I've talked to some people that do. In fact, so I said I was a realtor, and so I end up taking clients on long car rides all the time. And the conversation always comes up about the patches in my car, and I get to share some of my stories and some of my history. And a lot of times those people do something similar, whether it's stickers or just they've been to a national park or whatever. So they're always a conversation starter.
Yeah, always something to get the conversation rolling, and then it gives you the opportunity to share about those stories and then maybe connect with people who maybe don't have the patches themselves but have been to the places you have been or want to go, and you can start a conversation from there.
Yep.
Love it.
And
Love it.
that's a great thing to start conversations over is no one really there's no dividing lines when it comes to travel and especially the outdoors and things like that. Everybody wants to share their story, and whether it was a good or a bad experience, it's a good story. So,
Yeah, exactly. It's always fun to tell, maybe not fun to
yes.
experience. Yeah, for sure. So that kind of leads into another question, which I'm assuming I might know the answer to, but I want to see if you have. Have you ever traded or swapped a souvenir patch with somebody else, or had an instance where you had to like change it out or anything like that?
I know that's a thing, and I've thought about creating my own patch that kind of represents me. And if I thought I really would run into somebody, someday I hope to move back into the van and travel some more. And I would like to give patches out, trade them with people I meet or hopefully friends at that point. But I haven't at this point really traded with somebody.
Yeah, yeah, maybe down the line. I love it. The next question I have for you, which of course I know the answer because I am a product of it, but have you ever encouraged somebody else to take up patch collecting or,
No,
take it
you're
up as a
breaking
hobby?
up.
No. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
The video feed kind of cut out there for a bit too. But
Oh,
okay, what was
well.
the question?
The question was, of course I know this
You're
answer because
frozen.
I'm no. Can you hear me? Can you hear
Yep.
me? Okay. Okay. My question is for you. Of course, I know the answer, but have you ever encouraged a friend or a family member to take up patch collecting? And if you have, which I know you have, how did you do so?
Well, how do you remember this? So I just said I never buy patches for the one kid if the other kid isn't with me. But I don't think that was true in the beginning. I think I brought home some souvenirs. Maybe I didn't. But now, I mean, that's the first thing we do. Even we kind of go buy patches so we can start our vacation. And if we run onto one we like better while we're there, we buy that too. I mean, there's not really a limit to how many we can buy.
The $1
Um,
Walla Walla patch when we had already found patches, but we were like, hey, they're $1.
well, in Joshua Tree, that was kind of the whole point. We were getting there late at night, and all we wanted to do was get to the ranger station so we could find a patch. The rest of it wasn't even important. And then that ended up being one of the funner nights we've had together. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I love it. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
but just encouraging you guys to collect patches and enjoy it with me.
yeah, yeah.
And by the way, it's such a cheap thing to get that much mileage out of. So it really, again, it works well as the souvenir because you
Well,
don't have, I don't buy t shirts or, expensive knickknacks that are hard to move around to get broken. They're just cheap patches. And even though I've got like $1,500 worth of patches here, they were all purchased $5 at a time.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I always have said they are kind of that perfect souvenir because they don't break. They're not like stickers where, like, if you put them on something, you can't transfer them off unless you iron them on something. But even then, you can always like cut the stitching off and you can always do something else with them. And they're portable, they're specific to every place. Like, it is a great souvenir overall, too. It encompasses all the aspects.
Can I tell you one of my saddest patch stories?
You can.
So we went on a family vacation and we went hiking in the mountains of Colorado outside Denver. And on the trail, I found, was it a, I think it was a visor, right? Do you remember this?
I don't. Which trip was this?
I found a visor from apparently from a hiking club because they had little octagonal shaped patches from all of the local mount. I mean, there was like 20 patches on this thing, and they had lost it on the trail. And so I set it up on the sign and I took pictures of it and I tried to reach out and maybe find that person, but I never did. But hopefully they went back to the trailhead and found their
And found.
patches because it looked pretty special.
Yeah. Well, and it's a little materialistic item, but they really do hold a lot of meaning, and they showcase, as you said before, everything
Well,
has a story.
and that had all the 14ers patches on it and everything. So they had done some trekking to get those, I assume. I'd love to hear their story. Yeah, if I ever get so lucky, I'd love to hear the story of what those
Awesome.
were for.
Well, maybe this will reach them in some capacity. If you send me the photos, I'll overlay them, and
Yeah,
we'll see
I
if
can do
maybe
that.
we can find the people. Might be a cool way connect that community. Well, that is a very sad story, and I would never wish that on anyone to lose their patches. Hopefully, we can just think positive thoughts, and hopefully, they went back and found the hat and were able to.
Well, I have hope that that community of people all feel the same way about it. And so somehow they found their way back to that person.
Yeah, found back home, went back home. Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, I don't love it. I don't love that they lost it, but I hope
I understand.
feel confident in the positivity that hope they got it back. So love it. Okay, so I mean that kind of hints at the next question that I was going to ask you is what is the most memorable interaction you've had with another person because of souvenir patches? Of course, with that story, you didn't get to interact with the person face to face. But have you ever had any other interactions, whether it be through your own patches, through somebody else's? What's the most interesting interaction that you've had?
I'm looking through some of these to see if it sparks.
Sparks memory.
You know, nothing big is coming to me. Well, this is what I'll say, and maybe if I'll come up with a better answer later. But beyond just our kids, like I've had experiences where my whole family came up to Coeur d'Alene to ride the Hiawatha Trail 2 years ago, and same place I had the bike accident, although a different trip, by the way. Um, ev- Everybody took home a patch from that. I mentioned I got a bunch of Yosemite patches. Well, one of those was the time I took Grandpa out for a day and took him to Yosemite, and he'd never been there and hasn't been back since. I have a lot of great memories from that day. The day we went home to Utah and went out to Antelope Island with three generations of Erickson men, and we all got patches from Antelope Island that day. I mean, yeah, it all my stories are pretty much in the family, but they're markers of the things we've done as a family that have really brought us closer together. So they're not just lip service to a concept, they truly are markers of that.
And I can agree with that just based off of my collection and the connections that I've had with you of course, and then also just all of the things that it's the opportunities it's presented me of getting patches and being able to commemorate those memories. I have a lot of those same fond memories of sharing it with families and friends and just seeing parts of the world and commemorating those. It's just such a cool thing to be able to be like, oh, this is me in like an art souvenir form.
Well, and these the vast majorities of these things are from state and national parks, but I have a Mall of America patch from the time I went out with you and we hiked like 10 miles around Mall of America.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, well, and I always think it's funny. I have things like the patch you got me this summer because I wasn't able to make it, but the Dutch Bros Regulars Club. Like that is not a specific memory, but we know how much I love Dutch Bros, and it commemorates all the times that we've ran to Dutch Bros randomly, or the list of people that I have that on my phone that like I've gotten to try Dutch Bros and things like that. I have things such as I have like a one that I got as a birthday gift. Like you just because somebody knew I liked to collect patches, they were like, here's a Montana patch because it's your first birthday here in Montana. You know, so many cool stories, whether or not they commemorate like an achievement, like a hike, or just like a fun experience that you had.
Yep, I agree.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, so the next question I have for you is, do you feel like collecting souvenir patches has now felt more like a personal hobby, or does it feel like something that you really do enjoy sharing with others and collect them to share with others?
It's a personal hobby, but I've already talked about how it's become a family thing and a family tradition. But I'll talk to anybody for as long as they want about my patches. So I love sharing with people. And nobody's ever, as far as I could tell, not been interested. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah, I agree there. I think I would give the same answer of I mean, I could talk on and on and on and on about my patches to anybody that would listen for however long that they would listen. Um, Even though it is my personal hobby and it's something I love, but it is something I really enjoy sharing with others. And furthermore, enjoy sharing with others in the capacity of I'd love to share those experiences with them and then try to get them to collect patches. Like I've been with friends on different instances and gotten them patches and things like that.
Well, and that's part of the reason I love the idea you had for this podcast is I know there's people out there that are just dying to have someone interview them about their patches, including me. So thank you for having this.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's such a cool opportunity because even though I only know you and Easton as other patch collectors, I've already connected with so many people, and it really is a community. And there are much, there's so many stories to go around, and there's so many different concepts and rules with everybody's different patch collections. But it's such a cool thing to see how other people showcase the things that they've experienced and how they share it and how they display those things.
Well, and I can't wait to see some other people's responses and steal some of their ideas. Yeah.
Exactly. I know the treat jar might leave just you. Everybody might be having treat patch jars. It would be fun.
Well, and it's
It,
full.
oh,
So
well, it looks
yeah, and
like
I've
there's a
still got
couple.
all these on the table. So yeah, it's we're gonna have to find another way to store these soon.
Oh, I love it. I love it. That's a good problem to have. I love it. Okay. Well, so that brings me to my very last question, which we have kind of touched on a little bit. But if you have any other stories that you'd like to share, please feel free to do so. Have your patches ever sparked a conversation or a connection with someone you probably wouldn't have had otherwise?
Like I said, they're a conversation starter for me, but um going back to the band,
I think I know. I think I know what story you're about to tell.
well, I don't know if you'd be surprised or really not surprised about how much people want to come talk to you when you live in a van, and especially when they see a whole bunch of patches from all over the place on the headliner of that band. It's like open the back door up and immediately sometimes you get a crowd of people you're just not expecting, and they'll come up and want to hop in the van with you and talk to you about your patches, and that's kind of cool.
It is. Yeah. Just the opportunity to meet somebody you probably wouldn't have met before. But obviously, if they display that interest, you probably have something in common. So it's a great way to connect with those people and share some, get to talk about your stories, but then also learn about
Was
them as
that
well.
was that the story you thought I was going to share, or
That was not the story I thought you were going to share.
what one did you think I was going to share?
I thought you were going to talk about how that one guy like called you out on social media because he thought the patches were something else. And then Easton's mom, Ashley, ended up contacting him and was like, hey, they're souvenir patches. And then you ended up being like fine with him. And so, like, maybe it's not a great connection, but like Easton's.
3 years later, I just saw him at the grocery store the weekend before last, and he put his groceries down, and we had a 10-minute conversation out in the parking lot, and he moved away and moved back, and now he's back in town, and great
And
guy.
maybe not good friends, but but goodwill between when the original situation maybe wasn't that case.
Yeah, that could have been a bad situation, but it turned into a good one. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, good. I'm glad. I'm glad to hear. I didn't know that, but I'm glad to hear that it is good. But and that was the story I thought you were going to say when you first started. But I'm glad that now it's worked out good and there's no ill will.
no, no.
Good. Well, alrighty. That kind of brings us to the end. Is there anything else that you would like to share? Any other Stitch stories you'd like to sew into our little recording here?
Good pun. No, there's nothing really more for me to say other than, you know, go out and whether it's patches or something else, find something that you can frugally so that you never have to think twice about getting a patch or a sticker or a shot glass or whatever it may be. Do your own thing, but never have to question, is it worth it or not? No, stopping at a gas station somewhere in Wyoming to buy a patch just because we're on a road trip and Wyoming isn't even really part of our road trip, but I still have that patch and it's one of my favorites. So go find something that you can collect and do it. And maybe you'll get on a podcast like this.
I love it. Well,
Cool.
thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks, Dad. Thanks, Scott, for anybody who doesn't call him Dad. I appreciate it.